So the astrology of the week of 26 July 2021 through 1st of August 2021 has the continuation of these oppositions along the Leo Aquarius axis. And we get another bout of that, another dose of that this week. Very intense week along those lines. It may be a blow off top in a way of the second half of this summer. We've got Jupiter opposing Mars along the axis, and then we have Mercury with the Sun very close opposing Saturn. So let's get into the charts, let's get into the week. I wanted to just mention briefly, this is a defining theme of the summer. We can always just march or map where Saturn is, and when these slower planets move through the zodiac, they take turns. Remember the Sun, Mercury and Venus all travel very closely together. And so every time we have a season, let's say Leo season, for example, when the Sun comes to Leo, very shortly following or before the Sun's movement through Leo, you will have had Venus and Mercury doing the same. And so you can map the solar movement, the Sun's movement, against Saturn's position and figure out when you have these hard squares to Saturn during any given year in life. Saturn moves through a sign every 2.5 years, and so there's a constant change in terms of what may be the most intense seasons in terms of a solar season. And Leo season this year is it. Leo season has the Sun opposing Saturn. Then you add on top of that analysis the position of Mars, and you can set the Sun, Venus, and Mercury aside completely and just look at Mars and Saturn and their dance. And we had Mars conjoining Saturn last year. Then we had Mars in Aries with that long retrograde, and now we're finally in completing the Mars opposite Saturn. Mars is about every 2 years through the zodiac, and then with its retrogradation it can delay sometimes its return to a given sign. And so those two cycles overlap each other this summer because we have Mars opposite Saturn, and then during Leo season, or some overlap with Leo season. So that's kind of the introduction here as a theme, as an overarching theme of what we've been wading through and experiencing, and we get just another dose of that this week. What we're going to do in this video, let me say that now, we'll look at the sign changes, the aspects between planets, the retrogrades or stations, if any. There's none this week. So that's what I'll do first. Then I'm going to go to the moon and look at the sign changes of the moon, just to map that lunar energy this week. And then I'm going to go in chronological order with some of the charts I find most interesting, and then I'll conclude with a short tarot cartomancy reading to add an additional set of symbols and some more context. So let's jump into this first part of the talk here. Planets, what they're doing this week, what's happening this week, and we have these 3 sign changes. A really big shift this week. Mercury into Leo, its turn now opposite Saturn. Mercury's moving fast right now, so it's not going to be too long with Mercury opposing Saturn. But this is the more analytical side of facing off with Saturn. It's instead of using that martial power and force, and we've seen that with people in the streets all over the world. As I make this video, there's massive group gatherings of people all over the world opposing what they view as, restrictions that are unfair. So that's the Saturn in Aquarius and this opposition from the Sun and Mars. We talked all about that in last week's video, but it's pretty cool to see it manifest. It's one of those astrologer good moments. It's pretty perfect symbolism, actually. The Sun with Mars challenging authority right now as I'm sitting here globally. And that ends. As soon as Mars comes into Virgo, we lose that kind of power with our ability to oppose Saturn. And we gain, though, with Mercury's ingress, the kind of tricksterism, the analytical side. Maybe the battle becomes less about using force or a show of force and more about just analyzing a situation, sharing facts and ideas. And so that's what happens this week. And then we also, that's on the 28th. So that would be on Wednesday, 3 a.m. where I am. You get Mercury ingressing into Leo. Also on Wednesday, Jupiter comes back into Aquarius. I've talked about that at length in many of my weekly shows, and so I'm not going to dwell too much on Jupiter back into Aquarius, other than to say we return to that first 5 months of the year and we lose the sort of Piscean Jupiter, where Jupiter has a great power to disseminate its freedom and its goodness and its love and its powers through that water sign, that kind of diffuse water sign. We now get Jupiter coming back to aid Saturn, and to aid the Saturnian themes. And maybe that helps with the feeling of being restricted. We have Jupiter now to help us kind of find abundance within the cage, so to speak, if that's any kind of consolation. And I think it is. I think you can think about the first 5 months of the year, Jupiter was added value hopefully to your life. You're able to maneuver, adapt to this new world we're in, make the kind of expansions into the things you're doing in your life with that Jupiter-Saturn aid. And remember, when Jupiter came into Pisces, there was this great sense of, why wasn't this as good as we thought it was going to be? And part of that was that Saturn was left alone in Aquarius without Jupiter's aid. I'm looking back now on Jupiter and Pisces, and I can see just how potent it was and how powerful it was, and along the lines of both the mundane astrology, all the reopenings, but also my personal life and in the lives of my clients. There's this kind of subtle power that this Jupiter gave, and there was a lot of accessible sort of abundance. But maybe we let that go and we leave that now, and now we're bracing, and this week we enter into this return to the Aquarian moment and this Jupiter-Saturn Aquarius push for the next 5 months of the year until Jupiter will come back into Pisces in late December. So that happens on Wednesday. Then for 32 hours, Jupiter is very close to perfecting its opposition with Mars, and then perfects that opposition, and then Mars will leave Leo and enter Virgo 32 hours after, and the next day after Jupiter comes into Aquarius. So this is very explosive. This could be, with all the stuff happening this weekend, and now we see like the ramifications of that maybe coming here into the week. This is extremely potent and explosive. And setting aside, any kind of global unrest right now, remember when the square happened? We had Mars in Aries squaring Jupiter in Capricorn last year. There was an explosion of, literally explosions, all over the world simultaneously, like in a 24-hour period. That's what just taking the natural signification of Mars as fire and force, and the power of force and fire, with Jupiter as expansive abilities, and you had this combustion. So I'll be watching for something like that here. You might think about in the personal life how, and I'll get into all this here in a second because this is one of the charts we're going to examine, but what narratives have been happening this summer for you. This may bring big turns and shifts into those narratives. Now, I want to just say the other big moment this week, and as we get closer to the weekend, we have the Mercury cazimi, Mercury in the heart of the sun. And that takes place on Sunday, 4 p.m. And then Mercury perfects an opposition to Saturn on Sunday at 11 p.m. So right at the end of the week, we get this other big moment, which is the Mercury-Sun opposition to Saturn. Mercury perfects its opposition Sunday. The Sun will perfect its opposition in the early morning of Monday. But so it's almost like this week has these two climaxes. It's Wednesday, Thursday with Jupiter, Mars, and then the Sunday Mercury cazimi Sun opposite Saturn. And that's how this week goes. I mean, it's kind of it's potent, it's powerful. It's again a continuation of the Leo Aquarius fixed sign opposition story. And these are the moments when you have the hard aspects, oppositions and squares, where reality and facts propel themselves forward to the next chapter. So we're almost through that with this summer, this kind of inching ahead into our new chapter of the human reality. And isn't it great to be alive as human beings and be perceptive and sentient and being able to just move into reality? Whatever the obstacles are, that's the Saturn in Aquarius, we can still honor the beauty of life and kind of have a more dignified and noble way that we can maneuver no matter what's happening. That's my belief anyway. So let's move on now. Those are the planetary aspects and sign changes of the week. Let's push now into the moon, and let's check out what the moon is doing. So again, another week where the moon we start and end the week with this fixed sign activation with the moon. So we're starting here on the 26th. We get a few hours, a few remnant hours of Mercury's transit in Aquarius. That waning moon now, getting into the waning cycle from the full moon we just had early Saturday morning. Really cool moon. I was out watching it, by the way, and I went out just to see it. Wasn't as large in the sky, but it was powerful. And the coolest thing about it is I saw the moon, and then I looked over to the left, there was that glowing Jupiter in Pisces. And so it, to me, is because in the charts those two placements were averse, we talked about this last week, the kind of two dual worlds where you have the two lights and Mars and Saturn on the Leo Aquarius axis, but then we have Mercury in Cancer, Venus in Virgo, and Jupiter in Pisces. There was all of the night sex sign having these beautiful activations with the benefics. I really felt that, but visually it hit home strongly by seeing that glowing Jupiter. So it's another moment of advocacy here based on my recent experience. Get out and look at those planets. I almost felt a physical, non-verbal downloads that came from Jupiter in ways that were extremely potent, and from the moon. So do that as much as you can. I highly recommend it. But we'll begin this week here, a few hours still of that Aquarius moon. Then we get this Pisces moon. And this is the last time we're going to have a Pisces moon with Jupiter and Pisces until 2022. That happens Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And it's our final experience maybe of the healing and potent truth-telling powers, abundant powers of this lovely Pisces Jupiter. And I think that it's very positive in a way, like I just mentioned. I don't want to claim that now we can't have access to healing once Jupiter comes back into Aquarius. It's just that it's a different flavor. It's much more Saturnine. Jupiter's co-present with Saturn, and so almost is giving its powers over to what Saturn wants to do, and those new structures and those new restrictive discipline, structures we've been building. That is a different way that Jupiter filters now through Saturn starting this week. But this transit, it's the Pisces moon, again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all of this Pisces moon happens with Jupiter still in Pisces. We get I believe, because the moon will ingress into Aries on Wednesday at 11 a.m. and Jupiter comes into Aquarius on Wednesday at 2 p.m., roughly 2:30, 2:42 p.m. So it's the full Pisces moon with Jupiter. And I love that the moon, that great trigger of the sky, comes and gets to send Jupiter off. It gets to spend time with Jupiter and then almost send Jupiter back into Aquarius. This is and we'll see the chart here in a second, my transit of the week. Enjoy this Pisces moon, this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday moment, all of Tuesday, most of Monday, all of Monday if you're in North America, and then a little bit of Wednesday, or about half of Wednesday here in Europe. This is a time to kind of take stock, coalesce here, integrate what we've just gone through for these 3 months, or even just this weekend if that's been intense, and really let those healing waters take over and take you over and submerge yourself in them. Submerge, and submerse, I guess. Oh, my language here is failing me here. But submerge yourself in these healing waters. And it's so then the other thing after this Aries moon transit, we'll have, which will take place from Wednesday at about midday into then Friday. At the end of the day, Friday, we have a whole weekend with this Taurus moon. The moon now gets slows because it's coming to Black Moon Lilith, which is now in Gemini. The moon will slow there and spend a lot of time in Taurus this weekend to kick off the T-square of Mercury, Sun, Saturn, and then the moon in Taurus. So I think this weekend is again poised to be really, really intense, and maybe less martial and more about the mercurial feature of how we engage in this story of the fixed signs, the story that we've had all year really with these fixed signs. So let's dive into now, that's the moon's movements and the moon sign changes. Let's jump into the charts. The first chart I want to look at, Monday, 8 a.m. where I am here in Central Europe. Very early in the morning in America on the East Coast. This is my transit of the week, and it's that Pisces moon, just like I discussed here. But if you can get it early on Monday, you get a moon here separating from Jupiter. So just after the moon conjoins Jupiter in that very first degree of Pisces, the moon will be separating from Jupiter and applying to Venus and Virgo on the other side of the zodiac. It's what we call in the ancient system the bonification via enclosure. And this really sweetens the moon. It really, think about it just of like loving beings surrounding the moon, holding the moon, giving the moon anything it needs, comforting the moon. And it allows us to tap into not only our lunar powers, ease, love, comfort, mothering, nurturing the body, protecting the body, the home life, the grounded into the kind of protective structure surrounding us. But as you know from watching my videos, I like to then extrapolate how powerful the moon is vis-a-vis its lunar mansion, its tropical lunar mansion, which I found can tell us very much, can tell us a lot about the zodiac. And so let's take a look at the lunar mansion energy here. And before we do that, I just want to say reflections on healing. Remember, it's a waning moon, so this is a settling part of the lunar cycle. It's actually perfect for being with Jupiter, in the sense that Jupiter's night sect domicile, Pisces, is of the night sect. And so I think there's a doubling up on themes of waning and relaxing into healing powers, truth, wisdom, love, higher motivations in life. Again, this integrative phase. I was saying a nourishment is a term that came up in a reading of mine this week. So it's like the nourishing or nurturing phase of our lives here with this lovely Jupiter in Pisces, healing waters. You know, thinking about how healing it can be to just clean and cleanse, or even holy waters, right? We bless the water. There's a magical side to how water can operate. And maybe you have some holy water. I grew up in a family with holy water. We always had it around, and we would anoint ourselves as needed, you know. So this is the kind of energy we can have to heal and rest. Now, after the full moon in Aquarius, after the explosive mundane astrological events of unrest, global unrest, we're here now to heal. And this happens all day Tuesday, a lot of Monday, and a little bit of Wednesday. Now let's check out those lunar mansions. The first one is, so it's the 26th and 27th lunar mansion, mostly the 26th, because the 26th lunar mansion ends at 4 degrees, 17 degree minutes, 9 degree seconds of Pisces. And the moon will perfect that opposition to Venus in the next degree over. Maybe it's about within 2 degrees after. So there'll be about 2 degrees in the 27th lunar mansion and 3 degrees here in the 26th lunar mansion, 3 or 4 degrees, 3.5, something like that. But these lunar mansions, the thing about them, this 26th lunar mansion is the lunar mansion that the sun is in every year on Valentine's Day. It's one of the reasons why Valentine's Day happens on February 14th is that it's good for love, marriage, friendship. This is the lunarium.co.uk website. They have little summaries of each lunar mansion, but they're grounded in heavily in the text. And so if you go to that website, I've just screenshotted here the first little half above, but they have all of the writers writing about the lunar mansions below that. It's a lovely site, awesome site. Shout out to them, use them, go to them. But they say that this mansion is good for love, marriage, friendship, health, and healing. Remember the healing Piscean waters. And it's not good for building. Its essence is love and affection and union. And if we go to the next lunar mansion, the 27th lunar mansion, this is also good for business and commerce, but healing. And they're both good for farming and gardening and healing. And those are very lunar themes, very lunar components to life, right? We're in a home and we let that home heal us through the process of how the earth generates things, you know, and comforts us and sustains us. So that's the commonality between these two mansions. And I think it does relate to Jupiter and Pisces being ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter being a planet of healing and a planet of these kind of great ways and these kind of transcendent styles of healing that can come, you know. And so gardens need water to heal. Again, the healing waters, the theme of the healing waters. But this mansion is not good for building either. And so both of the mansions aren't really good for building. Remember, building is more of a martial kind of thing, or more of a day sect sign, if we want to just divide it up between the what they call the so-called gender of those signs. But we think about here, I mean, I think about Mars as a very fiery planet, right? That is about tools and buildings. Saturn can be about building things. But when we start talking about Pisces and the side of Jupiter that is more about high level shifts and these kind of moments of healing that are epiphany oriented, it's not much about the technical and practical sides of building here. We're dealing with, and this is kind of a water element theme too, we're dealing with healing, and we're dealing with the cleansing and the brushing and washing away of things. It's a removal process here with this waning moon. We want to let go and remove. Water does that. It's the perfect thing for it. That's why we bathe every day. We can wash away the grime, you know. And this is what I think about Jupiter and Pisces, actually, if we want to extrapolate here a larger theme about why maybe Jupiter and Pisces isn't always, you know, just instant awesomeness, because it's a washing away of grime, and that can be challenging. It can be tough to let things go, seeing darkness and then washing it away. I think about those kids when they get their hair washed and they're crying, or when they get their hair cut for the first time. I think I was doing this a lot as a kid, crying and so afraid of the shampoo and of the, you know, of the cleanse that can come with like trimming the hair. So there is a kind of, and truth, you know, think about those, I've talked about this recently, but the moments when the truth bomb drops, it can shake the psyche. It can shake the psyche up. But I think this Pisces waning moon, enclosed by the benefics, in these lunar mansions relating to healing, I think we're really dealing, and in the final moments of Jupiter and Pisces, this does feel like a transit of integration. It's not the initial shocks of a truth bomb, it's the integrative healing come down phase that we'll have great access to this week. And I don't want to underscore this, I want to highlight this again. My transit of the week, use Tuesday and Monday during this enclosure, really use it to just love yourself, care for yourself, heal yourself, wash yourself, cleanse yourself. It's some great energy. Look, we're in an intense time in the world. We're in a massively intense inflection point in our lives. Anybody that's been alive 20, 30 years, anybody that's been alive before 2020, but mainly kind of these, if you've come into adulthood around 2019, 2020, so people born around, you know, 20 years old or older, this is a massive inflection point in all of the collective, in our lives, in our experience that we're going to have in this human incarnation. We need transits like this to pause and heal and integrate and recover from really the traumatic stress that's ongoing right now. And it's you know, I feel traumatized and in shock a lot. I look around and my life got turned upside down, and you know, the world, everything's uncertain, you know, in the world. And I think this return of Jupiter to Aquarius will bring back some of those feelings of what is this. Some of the new installations of these new structures are going to continue to happen here this fall. So when we see opportunities for healing and integration, I believe we need to just take it and acknowledge them. Sometimes just knowing, and that's why I like to do these videos, of just knowing when these enclosures happen can give us an awareness of that energy, like just saying the energy is really good right now, and then feeling it, and then it can kind of open up access to ourselves and can give us access to the transits and to the astrology that's happening. So it's wonderful. Pisces as integrative here. These two lunar mansions are both about healing, okay? So all right, let's jump in to the, and if you want, you know, why don't I do this? I'm going to open up my solar file. I'll give you the exact moments of when this enclosure begins and ends, because I was just saying get aware of the specifics of these moments, and I'm not giving you those exact times. Let me do that right now with the solar fire, and I will. It won't take long here. Let me just punch up the transits, and I will get that up for you right now. So let's go for, I don't know, 6 days, and we will get that going. All right, so the moon here will conjoin Jupiter at 5:55 a.m. in Central European Daylight Time, and then the moon will oppose Venus at 3:04 p.m. Central Daylight Time. So you basically from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. here in Central Europe to have this benefic enclosure. I'll let you do the time zone calculations for yourself, but it's basically midnight on the East Coast in America until about, what is that, 7-8 p.m. a.m. So it's early Monday morning. Maybe as you're laying in bed there in New York City, you can wake up and just feel that goodness, okay? And this is good for a sleep transit for everybody in North America. As you sleep, maybe the dreamscape will be very, very potent in a positive and beneficial way. So I'll just share with you my solar fire. I know some of you use it. I just did a search for all the aspects with the classical planets to get them in order this week. You can see anytime we do a search with the classical planets or any number of planets, it's always the moon that's hitting everything. The moon moves so fast and it makes aspects every day. I could do a daily astrology show just looking at what the moon's doing every day. It's just a lot of work, to produce a video. But that's something to consider maybe if there was like a whole studio here. This is what I would do if it was a daily astrology. You could go really into the nitty-gritty of what the moon is doing. So, okay, let me go back and share my PPT, my PowerPoint, and let's come back here. Those are the exact hours. I'm glad to give them to you. And let's shift now to the 29th of July. This is Thursday. This is the moment that Mars and Jupiter will oppose each other. They'll perfect the opposition that began is upon Jupiter's coming back into Aquarius the day before. That opposition begins, and it begins closely applying. According to how I like to look at aspects, there is no opposition until the ingress of Jupiter into Aquarius. Only then does the opposition begin. And so it's a kind of thing where Jupiter's thrown right into a very intense aspect immediately when it comes into Aquarius. It's like being thrown into the deep end of a swimming pool. And so this is a 32-hour opposition that takes place, but it perfects here at 5:50 here on Thursday. So right in the early evening, about midday in New York City, Mars is force in action in Leo, strong in its Egyptian term in those final degrees of Leo. Mars will then oppose Jupiter's expansive qualities in Aquarius. I have no idea what this is going to be. I think it may be, if we're following this mundane story of the massive protests that I've sort of been following, this could be like maybe an extension of those midweek. This could be things like, people getting arrested. Jupiter's now back into Aquarius, assisting Saturn. This could be a whole number of things, but watch for it. This is also just an extension. If we looked at the whole of this summer's opposition from Leo and Aquarius with Saturn and Aquarius the whole time, and then the planets as they march through, this is one transit that I would mark as a big feature, a big part of the explosive moments of this summer's story. We had one last week with the Aquarius syzygy, with the new moon in Aquarius. That's a punctuating mark. We had the whole thing earlier this summer with Mars squaring Saturn and perfecting the square with Uranus very close. That's part of the story. And so we get another page here. As you're reading a novel, you turn the next page and the new action. This is that next action. And it's a very important shift, I think. I think this energy can be very explosive. Like, I've already delineated this some, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much here, but I want to underscore the importance. I had here moving truth to the front lines. Now with Jupiter coming back and joining Saturn, this idea of higher level of epiphany or sort of reality frame, the truth, it now has to come back and confront Saturn again. And this Mars-Saturn opposition and this final moment with Mars. So maybe this is more of just the shakeouts. Look, we're in a truth war and an information war in a way, in the reality. And I know there's different opinions out there, and my role I see is trying to integrate different opinions. I mean, there's a big split in the world right now about what's the best for the world and how to move forward. I actually had a tweet thread this week where I was asking about the astrology community in particular. What are we going to do about astrology conferences, where we have half the people think a certain way, half the people think another way, and then we have technologies of access into public spaces? What are we going to do about astrology conferences? How do you bring people together and reach agreements to protect the community at large? That's what I want to do, and so, but there's a real kind of competing realities and competing truths. And so with Jupiter coming back into Aquarius, I think whatever your version is, whatever the kind of version you tend to break towards, you know, there's opportunities here for that truth to kind of combine with the Saturnian style obstacles and maybe help break those obstacles up or soften them a little bit, or maybe that what Saturn is doing in Aquarius can come from more of a place of truth now and harmony with Jupiter. That's how I really like to look at it. But no matter where you're at with the kind of world situation, you know, you can use this to align what you think here, or maybe even look for Jupiter to crack open your belief systems. I mean, I think we should always try to stay open to what Jupiter can do in terms of changing our minds. And I like to always keep an open mind about what I hold to be reality. I'll maybe need to let that go. Maybe this is another phase of integration in with Saturn, and the Saturn in Aquarius transit, the 3-year transit. Now is a chance to get upgrades about how we can use that Saturn and maybe soften in our relationship to it. So that is what I'll say about the Mars-Saturn opposition. Perfects here on Thursday, 5:50 in Central Europe. The other thing I want to take a look at with this transit is the fixed stars that Mars will be conjoining. None are close to Jupiter, close enough that where I would want to examine them. But there are 2 fixed stars very near Mars in Leo. One is Regulus. Regulus now exists on the other side of that sign boundary in Virgo. But the star Algeba, pardon the pronunciation, I know I probably got that wrong, is 1 degree minute from Mars. It's on this side of the border between Virgo and Mars. And Regulus and Algeba are in the same constellation. So they kick us into the same constellational myth, the myth of Leo the Lion. And we're already now in a world of courage, ferocity, temper, the hunt of the lion, the great regal lion, the royal power of this royal star. And the royal star is like great power, great eminence and power, but at a price. You see in the myths around Regulus, there can be a fall, a great fall of the king. We had that with Trump. He had Mars with Regulus in his first house, and I don't think it's controversial to say he had a fall. He took a big fall, losing the election and all the stuff that went down last year. So you can see that fall that Regulus can bring. So with Mars here opposing Jupiter now back into Aquarius, I'm wondering again about this, some stories I've been reading today about arresting people that were maybe involved in unrest this week. And I think this could be related to that, frankly. But setting aside those mundane delineations here, this might be a time to, think about what Mars has been doing in Leo for you. And this might be a moment of truth and reckoning, where you have consequences of whatever actions you've taken. And I don't mean that in a punishing sense. I mean that in the sense of each action builds on the next action and builds on the next action. We've been on this Aquarius pile-up story now for a few weeks this summer, 6 weeks or so with Mars there. And so we're now, having to confront some of the actions and the reactions of the decisions we've made. I know I'm looking at stuff. I've made decisions and choices and taken actions. And this week there's some of that stuff, I'm facing some of that in a good way, This doesn't always have to be about the crazy world out there. We live in an insane reality, and it's very easy to explore astrology and compare it to the world at large, but also in our personal life, sometimes these transits aren't as dramatic. Sometimes it really is like, okay, I asked this person to help me, and then we're going to do this thing together, and then we met a couple of times, and then now the next phase of that comes to fruition with a reckoning moment here. Maybe this is a down to earth moment. Pisces, Jupiter and Pisces can be kind of a diffusion and a head in the clouds, at being out to sea. That's a favorite phrase from me in Pisces, relaxing on the boat out in the sea, coming back and facing Saturn in Aquarius, Jupiter now ruled by that Saturn in Aquarius, Jupiter now in Aquarius in the moment of this opposition. It's almost like coming back down to earth, hitting that wall, removed from the water, put into the cold shower, and then kind of put back into the reality, coming into reality. So I think that fits with the Regulus and the Leo energetic here, being so close to the Mars-Saturn opposition. Let's take a look at what Manilius says. He calls it the monstrous lion. Doesn't sound very good, does it? But he talks about fresh fights with the lion, and lives on spoil and pillaging of flocks. There was something positive here. Okay, the proud portals with pelts urging to adorn the proud portals with pelts and hang on their walls the captured prey. This is the poem, the Manilius Astronomica poem. Beautiful work. But I think here about Mars is just the pride, and let's think about it as positive pride. Think about this endurance you've had with Leo, and Mars being in Leo opposite Saturn, all of the struggles you've done this summer. There's a moment here of kind of saying, all right, I did that, I went through that, I worked through that. And maybe this Jupiter opposition with Mars is about exploring and celebrating you and celebrating your victories this summer. So that's kind of a way to maybe lean into this Mars-Jupiter opposition in a way that isn't so ominous. Okay, let's shift here. The last transit I want to look at, the Sunday transit of the cazimi Mercury. This is the chart of Mercury moving into that heart of the sun, perfecting its conjunction with the sun. And these are moments, anytime the sun meets exactly with another planet, it can purify. It's that way that light purifies, that the light of the spirit can purify. Sometimes people say, where's spirit in this? You know, or where's God in this? And that's what these cazimi moments are. They help us find the higher spirit or God, so to speak, in our lives and in the functions of the planet that is being purified in that way. And baptism, you know, we're also dealing with planets being a retrograde, and now Mercury is direct, and it had to go back underground, under the underworld. It's not visible. So Mercury has to go underground, so to speak, enter the underworld, and then get purified with the sun. You talk about journeys, you know, dark nights of the soul. These are the kind of purification rituals that each planet undergoes in its synodic cycle with the sun. So we get that this week, and I think that the trickster quality, so Mercury is the trickster. It's a planet about tricksterism. It's about illusion. When you have a cazimi Mercury, maybe we can use these kind of trickster strategies to our benefit. And I think about it in this way because it's, look, in the moment of the cazimi, the two planets are in the 10th degree of Leo, and Saturn is in the 11th degree of Leo. Both planets are applying to oppose Saturn. So we might need tricksterism to face the opposition of Saturn and Aquarius, to face the big wall. You know, I've been reading a novel, I just finished it, about the Great Wall of China. And there was all kinds of tricks, like they would take stones out or rebuild things up, and they were constantly moving the wall and analyzing the wall and using that symbol as a way to kind of inspire each other. So that's just one example. I also saw the film Casablanca, and I had a tweet thread about this, I think last week at some point. Rewatched Casablanca this week, one of my favorite movies. God, it's so good. So tight. The plot is so tight. But it's all about getting transit papers and who's going to get them and hiding those papers. And again, using the trickster feature of kind of papers. When you live in a papers, please society, as they were in Casablanca, the Casablanca depicted in that film, people get tricky about how to attain the proper papers so they can maneuver in the restricted society that they're ensconced in. That is what I think can happen here. Now with the Mercury cazimi, we can explore other ways of facing our obstacles that are more about kind of tricking and using the detailed nature of Mercury to change details so that we can gain access or oppose the obstacles that we're facing. So getting sneaky and analytical, that's what I have here. And so, you know, double checking, triple checking, editing things. Sometimes you re-edit or you go back a third time, you find that key phrase or that key clause in an agreement that can open up everything, or that key feature if you're talking with someone in a negotiation and that maybe they didn't understand a point, and you go back over and you talk it back over and you break it back down. This actually happened to me recently, and I was like, oh no, this is the key thing, this was the solution, and it's just re-communicating that, and it's like boom, everybody's cool, everybody's clean and clear. So that's the power of a Mercury cazimi. Let's check here the other fixed stars that are conjoining Mercury cazimi here. Acellus Australi. It's the Acelli is what these two stars are called. They're two stars close here on the back of Cancer the crab. And I love these stars. I love the symbolism of these stars. They were the donkeys in the nativity scene with Christ. You see those donkeys, they're almost like guardians. That's shout out to Cleveland Indians fans. They changed the name, good for them. I completely support that name change. From Indian, which we know is completely offensive, now to guardians. I like the change. And actually in Cleveland, they have these statues on a bridge near the park where they play, of these kind of guardian statues. It's very much like these donkeys guarding Christ's nativity. And that's what these two stars are on the back of the crab. Remember the crab symbolism, it's a protective feature. It protects the animal. They have a crab to fight off anything that's going to try to, harm them. And so you have these donkeys here the idea of protection comes in with this Mercury Sun moment. The other thing I like about it is we go back to Robeson. He talks about the ocelli, which is Latin for asses or donkeys. They represent the donkeys ridden by Bacchus and Vulcan in a war between the gods and the Titans. And so these donkeys were part of a war, right? An opposition. Mercury, the sun in Leo, cazimi, Mercury cazimi, opposite Saturn in Aquarius. This is kind of a war. The sun is very strong, in Leo. Saturn's quite strong in Aquarius. You think about Titans and gods, things of great strength and power. And so this is almost like a tactic, this moment. With Mercury cazimi, we get the mercurial tactical strategies. But combined here, look at this. This is Robeson. When Robeson writes about the ocelli, the two stars, these donkeys were braying. And that braying, which is just basically making noise, or if a humans bray, they're yelling or they're just loud, boisterous with their communication. That's Mercury. Their braying frightened the Titans, and then the gods won because they had these donkeys that were loud. And so I just love this metaphor because Mercury is speaking and communicating. And so the way we speak and communicate in this moment, this coming weekend, with the powers of Mercury through the cazimi, and then through this fixed star, it's about speaking truth. I really think that our communication, the knowledge that we have, talking about that with others, communicating details, research and analytics and sharing that, making new connections and new strategies based on our Mercury can help us really overcome this Saturnian limitation, whether it's in your personal life or the collective. So I love this. This is why I use the fixed stars and the way that they conjoin planets. Remember, everything gets projected onto the ecliptic. So I'm not going to say the fixed stars are projected onto the ecliptic, but the planets aren't. The position of the planets, everything's projected onto the ecliptic. That's why I use the term conjoin without saying, the planets are conjoining the fixed stars here, even though everything's projected to degree position. Sorry to open up on that. I'm probably bringing in some other conversations I've had around that recently into this video. That's a whole separate topic. It's actually its own video. So I'm going to set that aside. But these fixed star conjunctions are extremely potent symbolically. I see it over and over and over again. And hopefully you see it as I'm sharing that with you week after week. Okay, so that is the weekly astrology. Continue riding the intense fixed wave, the intense wave of the fixed sign activation of summer 2021. Have a great week with that. Let's go to weekly tarot. Let's pull a couple of these tarot cards and check in with what the tarot wants to tell us and what symbols the tarot wants to add. I'm going to start here with my 54 card cartomancy deck. First card is let me see here, let me just find my images. Fixed card is the Two of Hearts. I so much love the Two of Hearts, generally speaking. I love it. So I've called this card the Fascination card. This is Venus in Cancer. That Venus in Cancer we just went through, I'm just remembering those cool elections with Venus in Cancer. I know some people were even doing some Venus magic with that Venus in Cancer that looked awesome. I love the Venus in Cancer. God, it's so cool. I just love Venus. I'm a Venus. I just love it. I just love it so much. And I'm thinking about Venus in Libra coming up very soon in August and September, and then in September. Venus in Libra is gonna come save the day. And it's coming up quite fast here. And actually there was something I didn't mention that I wanted to mention here. That got lost in one of my slides. let me go back. I'll just say it here briefly, and this will be part of the cartomancy, but Venus does ingress into its own Egyptian term, and it will be there this week. So there's a Venus in Virgo. It's after the moon. I'll show you. I'll just show you. It's after the moon is enclosed by Venus. It moves into its own term. Actually, I'm not going to open up solar fire. I don't want to get too distracted. I want to finish this reading. But Venus, this is what this is telling me, to think about the strength of Venus, not only in our recent past, so your relationships, the touch, the pleasure, and those comforts, and even if they're kind of superfluous comforts, sometimes Venus can be that. Sometimes the surface level comforts are actually deeply profound and deeply necessary. And so for me, it's like even the cup of tea. I had this cup of tea. I was going to wait to take a sip until after the video, but I mean, this is like a Venusian pleasure. These teas I've been getting are so important to my daily life and, enjoying my daily life. Very tasty, but that small pleasure can be essential to kind of a larger spiritual, power, the larger spiritual, the team, so-called, of spiritual tools that we're assembling to move into life. So I think thinking about what's made you feel good this summer. This is the moon, Cancer. So this Cancer energy. How's your home life? How is the love in your home life? Anytime you see a 2 in cartomancy or tarot, you're going to think about maybe one other person. Maybe you can pair off with someone and have a nice, lovely conversation. Take someone to dinner. Go join a meal with someone. Or maybe who you've been doing that with, because this is in the first position. Maybe you can think about how pleasurable that's been and then use that to pivot into the rest of the year. So this is about relationship and comfort and love and nourishment and nurturing in the relationship. And just consider, where is your life with that recently? And what can you use to face the rest of this summer and as we get into the fall. So I'm going to leave that card where it is. Lovely, lovely card. And let's get the Tarot of Marseille card from the God deck. All right, this is going to be the 15th. The 15th trump is the Devil, I believe. And that's so cool if it is. Let me just make sure that that is the card we're dealing with. No, sorry, it's Temperance. The number system with how I draw cards in the random number generator is different than the number system of the major arcana, so that's why it's sometimes confuses me. But this is Temperance. It's even better to see Temperance in this second position, the future position this week. Temperance corresponds to Sagittarius. It's the Jupiterian integration of art in the Crowley-Thoth deck. But it's the way that these higher level parts of beauty and truth can change us and change our lives for the better. So all the conversation in this video about Jupiter and Pisces and these final moments and how truth, wisdom, love, beauty can kind of, and the epiphany side of that, can maneuver and help us now with Saturn and Jupiter being co-present upon Jupiter's coming back into Aquarius. This card is very, very apropos for that conversation. And maybe there's a side. Let's see what the side of the Temperance card can bring to this Jupiter discussion. There's a balancing of waters. So it kind of relates to Pisces, even though this corresponds to Sagittarius. It tells us about Jupiter's water sign domicile as well. So, I think this is about integration. I'm going to go back to that terminology. We can integrate the things we carry and the powers that we have and learn how to balance them and flow with them and then deploy them as needed. Temperance is something where we're not going to extremes, where we've learned about how to hold truth, about how to come through those dark nights of the soul, of the cracking open those truth bombs, and then how to integrate and become a wiser person. Gandalf the wizard, he becomes white Gandalf because he's integrated all of the difficulty that he went through. And so this is about integration and becoming stronger. And I think about the Tarot sequence. After this, you get the Devil. After that, you get the Tower. The Devil is Capricorn, corresponds to Saturn. And I think there's this Jupiter-Saturn transition that you even see in the tarot correspondences that tells us the integration that we need to do this week, that Pisces Moon will prepare us for the very Saturnine moments and months really that we're heading into for the rest of the year. So that is the tarot reading. That's the weekly tarot. Have a lovely, lovely week ahead, and that's the weekly astrology again. And as always, I'm S.J. Anderson. You can go to my website, sjanderson144.com. Click here to schedule a reading right at the top. I love to read. I would love to read for you. You can support me on Patreon if you're so inclined. I thank you very much for that and for my supporters out there. Helps keep the videos going. And as always, have a lovely, lovely week. We'll talk very soon.